That January 2024, Japan Airlines Flight 516 lands at Tokyo's Haneda Airport with 360 passengers and 12 crew members. But just 5 seconds after landing, this plane collides with a Coast Guard plane on the same runway, which causes a big explosion. In no time, Flight 516 turns into a ball of fire and black smoke spreads all around. But how did such a fatal mistake happen at such a big airport equipped with modern technology? How did 2 flights reach the same runway at the same time? And were the 380 people on Flight 516 able to save their lives? Or did they fall into the sleep of death forever? Let's find out. Japan Airlines Flight 516 was an Airbus A35900 plane, which cost more than $1 million. This plane had a seating capacity of 380 passengers, and this plane was parked on the runway of New Chito Airport in Chopporo, Japan, on January 2nd, 2024. Slowly, there were 360 passengers and 12 crew members on board, but they did not know that today was going to be the most terrifying day of their life. In some time, this plane took off towards its destination, i.e. Tokyo's Haneda Airport, and in the next 2.5 hours, it was about to reach its destination. There were 3 pilots on the flight, and all 3 of them had a lot of experience in flying commercial flights. There were 12 highly trained and experienced crew members who were unaware that such an untoward incident was going to happen in Tokyo, which would test their experience severely, and if they failed, then all 3 passengers will burn to ashes. On the other hand, a 7.6 magnitude earthquake had hit the Noto Peninsula city of Japan, due to which many people lost their lives, while 250 people were still buried under the debris of collapsed buildings. Therefore, help was being sent for them from Tokyo's Haneda Airport, for which 5 crew members, along with a pilot, were already on board the Coast Guard's jetliner plane dashboard. The pilot turned on the engine, and this Coast Guard plane headed towards runway 34, right from where it was to take off. And it also got confirmation from the air traffic control. But there was a big problem here. Actually, on the other hand, after completing a journey of 2.5 hours, Flight 516 also started aligning with the runway number 34 right of Haneda Airport. The crew members asked all the passengers to wear seat belts, and now this flight was about to reach its destination in just a few minutes. The pilot also initiated the landing sequence, and slowly, Flight 516 landed safely on the runway, but before the passengers on board could breathe a sigh of relief, about 5 seconds after landing, a Coast Guard dash plane suddenly arrived in front of them. This fire was so fierce that light spread throughout the airport, and smoke spread all around. You can watch this accident live in the footage of CCTV camera installed in the airport parking. But how did such a fatal mistake happen at such a big airport? How did 2 planes collide with each other on the same runway? And will the lives of 360 to 360 passengers on board Flight 516 be saved? Let us know now, as I told you earlier, that Flight 516 was about to land on runway 34 right. The Coast Guard plane was also about to take off from the same runway. And when you see the aerial view of Tokyo's Haneda Airport, you will see many angular taxiways near the runway through which the flight comes towards the runway from the sparking area. Now in this, Flight 516 had landed from the rear on the runway. The Coast Guard plane had to catch the runway from the same rear part of the runway and take off from the front. In such a situation, the front of both the flights was towards the front, and the bag was towards the back. And when you see the CCTV footage of the crash, it has been recorded from a long distance, so very few details are visible in it before the collision. But on looking carefully, there's a big explosion in the F516 plane just 5 seconds after its landing, which means the Coast Guard plane must have been present at the same place when the explosion took place. and in the real footage of the airport too. We can see a taxiway at that place. That is, the plane must have come on the runway while taxiing. But now the question arises that if ATC knew that both the flights were going to take the same runway, then why did they not ask the Coast Guard plane to stop at the stop signal of the taxiway for some time? Therefore, the next day of the accident, the Transport Ministry released a transcript of the communication of the air traffic control with both these flights, i.e. the recorded copy of the communication between the Gulf and the crash, right before the accident. According to this gate of 4 minutes and 27 seconds, ATC gave clear instructions to Japan Airlines Airbase 350 plane to land on runway number 34 right, and the pilot also repeated the instructions, which means the communication of Flight 516 was perfect and there was no fault of theirs. Then who made the mistake? Come, do you know that according to ATC, they had told Dash A8 that day that another flight is landing on the same runway, so you should stop at the holding point, i.e. stop line on taxiway AC5, and wait there and waiting on the taxiway, like this is a common thing for a flight operating at a busy airport. But if the investigation report is to be believed, the Coast Guard plane did not stop at the holding point. Rather, it kept moving like the main runway, whereas the pilot of Flight 516 did not know that a plane was coming on the runway, and he got his flight landed. Now both the flights started moving like the runway, and because of perfectly bad typing, both the planes came face to face at a point on the runway, due to which both of them collided. So was it only the mistake of the Coast Guard pilot? Finding the answer to this is not that easy, because the air traffic control has radars to track every moment's movement on the runway, and during the investigation, the operator told that he did not see the Coast Guard plane moving towards the runway because he was busy helping other aircraft. He also said that we had already given instructions to the Coast Guard plane to stop. Now, why did the Coast Guard plane suddenly move forward, and was it the fault of ATC-2? The answers to all these questions will be known only in the detailed investigation report. For now, if we talk about how many people lost their lives in this accident, then as soon as the collision took place, 5 crew members aboard the Coast Guard plane died, although the pilot's life was saved with some serious injuries. On the other hand, as soon as the collision took place, Flight 516 became a ball of fire and stopped after being dragged forward for several meters. By now, the outer part of the plane had burnt badly, but the fire had not reached inside,